We begin today with the question of just how close the U.S. and Iran really are to a deal to end the war. Right now, U.S. officials and mediators are signaling the two sides are nearing a final agreement after President Trump proclaimed yesterday the war is over and said a signing ceremony for a memorandum of understanding with Iran could happen as soon as this weekend. Specific text of that agreement has not been released publicly by either side, but multiple sources tell NBC News the agreement would reopen the Strait of Hormuz, extend the ceasefire, and take steps toward addressing Iran's nuclear program, some of which would begin immediately upon signing. This morning, President Trump lashed out at Tehran after Iranian state media reported the preliminary agreement did not include commitments about Iran's nuclear program and that the U.S. had agreed to give Iran billions of dollars before it made firm commitments. President Trump accusing Iran of not dealing in good faith and warning, quote, they better get their act together and fast. It was a stark contrast to the president's more conciliatory tone yesterday when he touted the preliminary agreement. Take a look.
We just made a great settlement of the war with Iran, and we're going to be subject to finalization of documents, which should get done over the next few days.
I don't know if you heard, but we ended the war with Iran today, and they have agreed never to have a nuclear weapon.
Iran's foreign minister saying the two sides have, quote, never been closer, but stopping short of announcing a final deal. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, who has been serving as a mediator between Washington and Tehran, saying today, quote, a final agreed-upon text of the peace deal has been reached, and Pakistan is now working closely with both sides to finalize the next steps. Whether this is finally the beginning or the end of the conflict remains an open question, and this optimism from the president comes after he has repeatedly claimed for months now that the war was ending.
We're achieving major strides toward completing our military objective. And some people could say they're pretty well complete. And we've won. Let me say, we've won. You know, you never like to say too early you won. We won. We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over. But we won.
Iran is something that was essentially largely over in 2 or 3 days. We've won this. This war has been won. The war in Iran is going along swimmingly. We can do whatever we want, and it should be ending pretty soon.
Did you say 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks?
2 or 3 days.
Are we signing a peace agreement?
No, we have a good chance of doing it. We should be able to do it in 1 hour, if you want to know the truth.
Joining me now, NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba, NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs correspondent Richard Engel, and NBC News Senior National Security correspondent Courtney Kube. Monica, let me start with you at the White House. This developing news, President Trump saying that a deal is imminent. What are you learning about the details of this preliminary agreement, Monica?
And look, Kristen, we have heard that before repeatedly, as you just played. So it's unclear whether there's any actual meaningful momentum here or if this is another instance of the U.S. trying to project this cautious optimism that things could be coming together toward a deal. But we are getting a little bit more information from a senior administration official about what could be in here if this ultimately is signed. And essentially, this would reopen the Strait of Hormuz if there's agreement. It would lift the current U.S. naval blockade. It would lead to the eventual dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program and to the U.S. securing Iran's enriched uranium. But when we were able to press senior administration officials on exactly how that would work over what kind of period of time, officials basically said that they were still figuring out the answers to all of that. So I think that tells you a lot about this current moment as well, Kristen. We do know that there is obviously the desire to get to a deal here, it seems, but some of those major sticking points are still outstanding. And it is the president who just yesterday threatened potentially more strikes against Iran, only to then say that he had canceled them, instead trying to talk about this diplomatic effort. So again, this could all switch on a dime. It's unclear, but the White House trying to say that this is different, that this isn't the same case that we've been hearing about with this familiar pattern for weeks now.
Well, you take me to my next question, Monica, because the president said yesterday the war is over. So let me ask you about this memorandum of understanding. Would it effectively end the war, Monica, or would it hit the pause button?
Exactly that. It would basically kickstart a 60-day period of intensive technical negotiations that still could collapse or could fall apart. But it would also extend the ceasefire for 60 days. But as you know, Kristen, as you've been discussing repeatedly, and even in your interview with the president last week, this ceasefire itself has been tested over and over again in recent days. So extending a ceasefire doesn't mean that there couldn't also then be another example of U.S. military strikes. So that is another major question to all of this, too.
And Monica, before I let you go, the president saying the signing could actually take place this weekend in Europe. We know he's traveling to the G7 summit in France. What are you learning about that, Monica?
Yeah, and the president yesterday said that he couldn't make it there this weekend because of his commitments here with that major UFC fight scheduled for Sunday evening, and then he is supposed to leave after that for the G7 summit in France. So he suggested that it would be Vice President Vance who would actually go and attend this signing of the memorandum of understanding, of this initial tentative framework. But it's unclear whether that is actually going to take place. Iranian state media had sort of cast doubt on whether that could really materialize this weekend. And the location is also still an open question mark. But it does sound like, given the vice president's role so far in the negotiations, the fact that he went to Islamabad, Pakistan once to take part in those negotiations means that that is why he would be the one to go and do this initial phase. Though, again, that part is still up in the air.
All right, Monica Alba at a very rainy White House for us. Monica, thank you very much. Richard, let me turn to you now in the region. What are your sources telling you about this moment? Because you and I have had this conversation before with a deal potentially imminent and then it falls apart. You heard Monica address that. What are your sources telling you about how real this one might be, Richard?
Well, negotiators today were very worried. There was a lot of miscommunication today, and it seems to have begun when one Iranian news outlet, there's not just one state media, there's several semi-official channels, published a 14-point plan saying that this was the plan that everyone had agreed to. And President Trump and others read it and said that it wasn't like the plan that had been discussed. And you mentioned in your introduction that President Trump lashed out. The Iranians then, through the foreign minister, denied that 14-point plan, and they said that people should not be spreading false information. We also saw the Pakistanis chime in saying people shouldn't be spreading false information. This is he didn't exactly deny the 14 points, but he seemed to be referencing it. He said we shouldn't mislead the public and that the two sides have never been closer to a deal. And then President Trump forwarded that same denial by the Iranian foreign minister, who said that those 14 points were inaccurate and that the two sides have never been close to a deal. So what we saw today was a lot of people trying to defend this process, but not a lot of details coming out about what it specifically says. But people were concerned that it would fall apart as tensions remain very high.
And of course, you have Israel watching what's happening very closely. The prime minister talking to President Trump. Let me read you something that Israel's defense minister posted on social media today, Richard. Quote, Israel must ensure that in the future as well, we will have the ability to act independently to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and I have instructed the IDF to prepare accordingly. As you noted, Richard, Israel's not a party to this agreement. So is there concern that the actions by Israel could actually derail a potential deal?
Well, you said it all in that brief sentence. Israel isn't officially a party to the deal, but of course Israel is a party to the deal. The United States and Israel launched this war together. Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump, who launched the initial attack that killed the now late Supreme Leader, who was replaced by his son. Now the Israelis are taking a less prominent role as they are focusing on Lebanon. But the Lebanon conflict is also part of this wider conflict. And according to some details that are emerging, as part of the extended ceasefire that should go into effect if and when this document, this memorandum of understanding, is signed, that Lebanon, that ceasefire should also extend to Lebanon. but it is not clear that Israel will abide by that ceasefire, that Prime Minister Netanyahu will stop attacking Hezbollah or pull out the thousands of Israeli troops in South Lebanon. Just the opposite. He has said that he will not do that he sees Hezbollah as an existential threat to this country. And then the post you just mentioned a short while ago, where Israel wants to continue to maintain the ability to carry out independent actions, including against Iran.
All right, Richard Engel reporting for us from Jerusalem. Richard, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Let me turn now to Courtney Kube, who's here on set with me. Courtney, thanks for being here. So you have this new really remarkable reporting about the military being about 3 hours away from carrying out strikes when President Trump pulled that back and said, no, we're not going to strike Iran. We're now close to getting a deal. Talk about the impact and the significance of that.
And I think some viewers might look at that and think, okay, so they were 3 hours away from pushing a button, but that's not the case here. In this case, there was a plan for manned aircraft to be up there carrying out some of these strikes that President Trump first announced on social media yesterday morning. So what that means is you had men and women on aircraft carriers there in the region who they spent the day getting their orders approved, getting their marching orders for what to do. The air operations plan was modified to make sure that they had the aircraft ready to go when they needed them. Munitions were loaded onto those aircraft. The pilots sat in the ready room and got all ready to go. I mean, they were ready to go and fly. And we can't forget, flying manned aircraft into Iran is extremely dangerous still. Yes, a lot of their military capabilities have been taken out, but that is a very hostile environment. It's a dangerous job. So 3 hours before they were supposed to literally start dropping those bombs on Iran, they were told via social media that their plans were being changed. It's a really remarkable turn of events, and the military is able to flex and to adjust. But this is just not the way that this is generally done.
Well, it's incredible to hear you lay out the details of it and the potential impact. President Trump, Court, is basically saying the war is over. From a military perspective, though, is that the case? How's the Pentagon viewing this moment?
They are ready to carry out as exactly what happened yesterday. They were not planning to carry out large-scale strikes, as President Trump announced on social media. But when he put that out there in the morning, they got ready. They have strike packages that are ready all the time. They modified and adjusted them, and they were ready to go. If President Trump were to decide to restart major combat operations, which he seems to waver back and forth on whether he's going to strike or not, the military is there and they're ready to do it. But again, it's this uncertainty that it's just difficult for men and women who are already deployed. Many of them have been deployed for months. It just introduces this element of uncertainty for their days.
Speaking of this element of uncertainty, after President Trump had announced that a deal was within reach, the military shot down Iranian drones. Talk about what happened there.
Within literally hours of the president making this announcement again on social media, Iran launched drones at commercial ships. And this comes when we know that the U.S. military they're not escorting ships through, but they are helping coordinate them. And they're bringing ships through this sort of safe passageway that's close to where the U.S. military is operating. So with that, they're able to put up their own aircraft, and they're able to have surveillance boats and various kinds of aircraft up that can help these ships if they come under fire, as they did. So again, it just shows how the back and forth nature of this. The U.S. military shot 2 of those drones down. There were reports of additional projectiles being fired as well.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.